Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and joining us here tonight in the studio to shed more light on this topic by Dr. Khaled Dahawy, the chair of the accounting department at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Dahawy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Sir, now talking about the Egypt Can Conference, which we're prepping for the 6th edition. Now, before we start talking about what we achieved through the previous 5 editions, but now the 6th edition, Egypt Can with Industry, trying to really focus on the industrial sector and a sort of an industrial renaissance, if we may call it. How integral is it right now as a sector to increase the Egyptian productivity, localization of the industry in the country? How important is such a conference to help boost this sector?
First of all, let's say that industry and the Egyptian industry per se requires a lot of attention. We've had a lot of slogans, we've had a lot of discussions, but very little has occurred. For many years, we've talked about protecting the Egyptian industry. However, this was not successful. We really need to build the Egyptian industry to be able to compete in a world that is very vicious. It is about time to stop talking about industry and to start real industry. And to do so, we have to focus on what is our advantages. We have to focus on what is really Egypt's main advantage, which is human resources. Human resources are the core of Egyptian assets. Well-trained human resource is a great asset. Horribly trained and taught Egyptian human resource is a liability on the country. Yes. For many years, we were under the impression that we had the cheapest labor, for example. In reality, I've had several meetings with different consultancies over the world. We have the most expensive labor in Egypt. They are cheap in terms of the price you pay them, but they're very expensive if you add in all the vacations, all the errors they make at the work, all the bad products they produce, and so on. So we need to re-engineer our human resources to be able to work with and produce what the world wants, which is top caliber products. Second, we need to work on figuring what is needed to produce. For many years, we've produced products and then went out and decided where and how do we export these. The world now is working opposite to that. You have to go outside, you have to have your local agents in the different countries, in the different markets. They look for the required products, the type of product that's required, the degree of or levels of products that's required. Then you start producing these products, because it's kind of a backward integration. When you start producing for these markets, what you do is they require a product, and then that product requires certain machines that you have to buy them. Not any machine will produce the product required for Germany, for example. You have to produce and export to Germany, you have to have certain machinery, you have to certain certifications, certain raw materials, and so on. So basically, our biggest investment in Egypt, and I hope this time we're going to do it right, is we're going to look at what the world wants and then start producing it. And that's the real renaissance in China. That's how it worked. They produce what the world wants, not what they can produce. And so with this new call for industry, with this new conference, I hope that this will be at the head front of our discussion, is how to work with our human resources to make them capable on producing sustainable quality. That's the other problem. It's not only producing things that you can export, but being able to sustain them at a sustainable quality that the world will take it. Because with the local market, we produce where 100 million people will consume. With the real world outside in competition, if you do not produce the top quality that's required, nobody will buy from you because the competition is very fierce. The rest of the world is doing so. The other thing, and I'm going to build on your first segment because I heard it in the program, which is Africa.
Yes.
It is about time we recognize, and as the president has just recognized, the importance of Africa. For many, many years, we have engaged ourselves in trying to be a small player in a big market, which is Europe and the Western world. And we forgot that we are a big player in a small market, which is Africa. I think we're a little bit late. but at least we're starting. Africa is a very virgin market, has been for so many years. We've neglected Africa. For many years, we're the leaders in Africa. And now we've awakened, we're trying to become leaders, and I'm saying trying because already China is in Africa, Israel is in Africa, Turkey, every country of the world that has investment is already in Africa, because they've recognized how valuable the African market is. So I hope that we can integrate the two together, the industry upgrade and the outlook to Africa, and to move to what is needed in Africa. I think we need to take steps into not starting by saying we want industry, but we want to look at what does the world require, what is requested in the markets of the world, what do we produce and what can we produce that would have a competitive advantage to be able to compete in these markets. Because everybody can produce everything. The decision of what to produce and when is a very important decision. And I think these should be the main factors, in addition, of course, to how to uplift our human resources, because we have so many people, but unfortunately we have a very, let me say, we have a backward pyramid. We have so many engineers, we have so many doctors, we have so many bachelor holders, but we have very little vocational training. And if you want to work on industry, you want one engineer, 100 employees. We have the opposite. We have many, many engineers, but no workforce, there's no need for them, and we have very little trained employees. If you go to the factories in Egypt today, you find something that's very interesting. You find that they want employees and they can't find employees. But you go out in the marketplace and you find people who want work, but they cannot. There's a big mismatch. And I think the real solution is what's called vocational training. If we start applying vocational training for plumbers, for carpenters, for people where the market is highly needed and well trained. Because what we have is actually a joke. We have people who go into the plumbing or the electricity just by virtue of being a little kid who works with an older guy and he becomes a plumber and then he becomes an electrician. But real vocational training is highly needed. And I think if we can capture these three ideas together, which is looking at what the international market is looking for, being able to get sustainable quality, filtering in with it highly trained vocational power of employees or human resources. Just to give you a number, in Egypt today, to the best of my knowledge, 60% of Egyptian population is below 30 years old. So you have a great power. If you train it well, it can help you move to this industrial power.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll just keep going with slogans.
Yes. Okay, so let's take it one step at a time, one point at a time. Let's talk about the human capital, the vocational training. Now, if we want, yes, we've established new universities trying to train a new generation of workers and employees, especially in the technology and the ICT sort of sectors. But to achieve such, if we're going to build an educate and train generation, it's going to take time. But what can we do to have a here and now sort of results? Can we actually try and implement and apply good, proper vocational training in different sectors within the industry to have a timely, speedy outcome?
Okay, you touched on something very important, which is we must have short-term goals, medium range, and long-term. Nobody in the world works with just saying, I want in 10 years to have, or tomorrow. We have to make sure we have different goals. In terms of education, I think you're absolutely correct. If we're going to build an educational map or plan for Egypt, I think this will take many generations, not just one. On the short term, though, we can start vocational training programs. These could be started by the different industries. Instead of going to universities, the different industries or associations can start certain vocational programs that are to speed start certain the employees into the workforce. So if we want, let's say, carpenters, we get the association and we get people who are in the industry to start building vocational programs. These vocational programs are 6 to 8 months worth of work. We train them well, and we get them into the industry. This is the only way to progress, because in the short term, nothing else can happen. And these, I think, and I hope that the government recognizes the importance of that, to transform our ideal workforce from people sitting in coffee shops doing nothing in the morning. In 6 months, you can have a carpenter, an electrician, and so on. But these have to be something that is very well studied. The world, I always believe that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is all over the world. Every country of the world. We find the top 5 countries in vocational training. We go out and check their programs. We bring the top 2, and we implement one of them with some Egyptianization of our needs. This is the only way you can take steps in the short term in educational purposes. Having said that, this is not without the long term. We cannot forget that the long term, we need to change our, and I'm gonna now talk about a taboo in Egypt, which is free education. We have to change that model of free education, because our model of free education have actually ended up with oversupply of bachelor degrees and a decrease or an undersupply of vocational workers. So I think we need to start talking to that there's an essential part of the education, maybe to Sanawiyya Amma, where people stop. University should be not free. As a matter of fact, we should decrease the number of people who graduate from universities and start having what used to be called vocational training, ta'lim al-fanni. This is the core of what we want today. So if you want to summarize what we just said, 2 plans at the same time working parallel to each other in education. On the short term, we have vocational programs to educate in 6 to 8 month people who already went through the programs, and now we're going to refine them and make them ready for the workforce in very fast-paced programs. On the other side, we start the very tough political program of saying universities are now going to be for money. Nobody will go into the university except if he is top of his class, so he gets a free education, or the rest will go to vocational training. This will mean several things, by the way. It's not a very simple program, and it's very hard to sell politically, but at the same time, it's also very productive. Because what you're going to do is, number 1, increase the vocational pipeline, which will bring in highly needed vocational people, workers, decrease the number of bachelor degrees that is now not needed in the market. And third of all, when you decrease the number of students in the universities, the quality goes up. Because we have hundreds of thousands going through the universities, but the quality that comes out is very low because you have so many, the high number of people condensed in the classrooms in the universities. If you decrease the number of participants in the classroom, you get a lot better quality. So you're hitting more than one bird with one stone.
Yes.
And this is short and long term, as you will know.
Okay. Dr. Dahawy, now another point, which is you've mentioned the demands of the market. What actually does the market need? What sort of products? Now, we're seeing a lot of emphasis on different sort of products, especially in Egypt now, talking about renewable energy, talking about gas, talking about green environmental energy. As you've mentioned, the sustainability aspect of it for Egypt's Sustainable Development Goals 2030. Now, there's also been quite an interest and a drive behind small and medium enterprises, talking about the entrepreneurship and the startups, as opposed to the traditional understanding of an industry and the factories. Now, what sort of balance do you think we should actually focus on? A lot of people are saying, well, we need a lot of focus on SMEs, startups, entrepreneurs. We need to get back all the factories and the industries that have been knocked hard after the 2011 revolution. And it seems quite of an immense sort of goal to achieve, or a target to reach. What kind of localization of industries and emphasis do you think we should have, especially as well that we're having many free economic zones being established around the country, not just the Suez Canal economic zone?
You've mentioned so many things, and it's a very, very big question, actually. I'm trying to set it in parts so I can answer the different parts. It's a great question. It's a very big question, and it covers a very big, wide part of our Egyptian economy and industry. Let's start with the fact that every great journey starts with small steps. And I think we need to have a goal, first of all. And one of the things that we have always failed to do is have a goal. If you ever think, and I'm going to take you to a very simple example, if you want to go to a certain destination, you don't ride the bus first, but you first decide where you're going, and then you decide what bus do you ride.
Yes.
And depending on the destination you plan for yourself, you start riding different transportation. The reason I say that, I'm happy to finally see our president, our government talking about Egypt 2030, 2050, and so on. When we realize that we want in 2030 to be the best producer of X product, then we start steps from now to do so. We've for many years thought that it's a turnkey project. Everybody comes in, we want to produce glass. So tomorrow we start producing glass. The world doesn't work like that. Instead, we need to say 2030, 2050, we want to do this. So to get to there, we start the program from today. We're at 2020, 10, 15, 20 years in the product. That's how the world has developed. That's all the tigers of the world have developed like that. Nobody just woke up in the morning and said, tomorrow we'll be going to produce the best producers of glass. It actually requires a lot of planning. So step number one, let's have faraway goals in the future, but they're very, very strong goals and important goals. And let's dream in the world. What do we want? To set certain industries. We've already, by the way, set ICT as an industry. We've taken great strides to help our industry in that area. We are good, by the way, in service industry, a lot more than production with products. So let's take ICT and say, in year 2030, we are going to have the top speed internet. We're going to be the service providers for XYZ in the ICT and so on. So this is one way to start. Having a goal and then deciding how to get to that goal. But number one, you have to have a goal or goals in this country. So number one, we need to start setting our goals. Be very ambitious about these goals. Look at the future and stay with the goals. And the goals should not change by the change of the ruling government. The goal should be government. We've seen this in the US, we've seen it in China, we've seen it in many countries. It doesn't matter who rules and who governs the country. It's always going to be, our goal in 20 or 30 years is to be in that destination. And the whole country works in that direction. So that's step number one.
Do you feel that SMEs and localizing industries is steps?
That is the second part I was going to try, because I told you your question is very big, actually. I'm trying to divide it into things I can handle. The second thing is, we as countries, when we talk about major companies, our largest companies in Egypt are not even small companies in the US by measures of the US. So if you talk about the largest companies in Egypt and you go look at Facebook or you look at companies like Amazon, Alibaba, all of these companies, we are small companies. So by design, we are medium and small companies. Our, in terms of numbers, our small or micro even, I would call micro, small and medium enterprises are the core of our economy. And they get the least attention of all. We provide no services. If we provide services to the top largest companies, and then we look at the medium-sized companies, and then the smallest company. I work heavily with taxes, for example. The best tax place to visit is for the large companies, and then the medium, and then the smallest. So they get the least amount of respect and help. If we are going to go into that direction, our core attention should be for micro and small, medium enterprises.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard from Dr. Dahawy now, the industry needs, or at least really renaissance of the industrial sector here in Egypt, needs a lot of work, be it focusing on different sectors, focusing on products, on services, on human capital and vocational training. There's still a lot to be achieved, and hopefully the Egypt Can conference can be a step towards such a goal. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Khaled Dahawy, the chair of the accounting department at the American University in Cairo. Dr. Dahawy, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.